afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Rebel News live stream on this, a Monday, March 3rd, 2025. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you a bit about my co-host, shall I? Do you know, folks, today is National Anthem Day? And I was going to begin today's show by singing "O Canada," but because my co-host is an Alberta separatist, I didn't want to get
Hey,
booed. She is
don't say that. Don't label me a separatist. Don't,
Oh,
because
wait, breaking news, folks. Sheila, you're not a separatist for Alberta?
I'm an Alberta firster. Whatever that means, I'm not having you pin a label on me. Because the mainstream media just loves to say that we're pushing things over here that we aren't. So I want to be as obscure as possible when it comes to that realm.
Oh, we're off on the right foot, aren't we, folks? She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. She is the sensational Sheila Gunn Reid. You know, Sheila, we have a special guest appearance today. Alexa Lavoie is here in Toronto Rebel News headquarters. In case I put my size 13 foot into a size 14 mouth again, do we know if Alexa is a separatist for La Belle Provence or not?
I don't believe she is at
Okay.
all. Yeah. Not at all. It's also National If Pets Had Thumbs Days. It's World Wildlife Day, and it's National Canadian Bacon Day, which must be an American thing because what they think is Canadian bacon, we definitely do not call bacon here. That's ham.
Yeah,
Like
isn't it?
it's
I
weird,
don't.
right?
It is Canadian bacon. You know, you're absolutely right, Sheila. No one in the Dominion of Canada calls whatever that pork product is Canadian
Yeah.
bacon. I've never heard a Canadian say I'd like Canadian bacon. That is 100% an American term. Is it? I might be wrong. Is Canadian bacon their way of saying female bacon?
I think so. I don't know
Yeah.
how we got pinned with it. I mean, we just eat the regular old bacon, the regular old smoked, delicious bacon like everybody else. I don't know how we got stuck with the pea meal bacon. I make no claims to that stuff. I don't
Well,
like it.
I
It's
love female
disappointing.
bacon, and
Do you?
when I took you and Lise on our magical mystery tour of Hogtown last month, I think I brought you down to the St. Lawrence Market, and
Yes.
basically what buffalo wings are to the city of Buffalo, chicken wings. There is a female sandwich. It's female bacon, cheese, and an egg on a Kaiser. That is supposedly Toronto's signature dish. I guess it ties into, the reason why we call Toronto Hogtown. We used to be a big
Yes.
hog processor here. So I can't remember if you took advantage of having that delicious sandwich. I believe I had two.
Yeah, you did. You went back for a second. I ate a butter tart and then regret. It was delicious, but it gave me a headache because I don't normally eat any sugar whatsoever. But I was standing there looking at them and I'm like, if I'm gonna eat sugar, now's my time. And then it was like I was crippled with the jitters and it's also National Mulled Wine Day, which seems weird because it seems kind of late in the or early in the season, depending on how you look at it, for mulled wine. I feel like mulled wine is more of like a Christmas thing.
Indeed. I mean, aren't we really in ice wine season given the temperatures in the Niagara Escarpment? But what
Yeah.
do I know?
Not much. Okay, let's get into what we're talking about. Don't pitch them over the plate if you don't want me to hit the home runs. This is the Rebel Roundup. It's a daily show. It's completely unscripted. We host it here at Rebel News, and we talk about the news of the day with each other, but also with you. So if you're watching us over on Rumble, thank you so much for supporting us there. It is a great free speech platform where you will get the full uncensored version of Rebel News. So if you're over there and you want to support the work that we do, you can leave us a Rumble rant if it's over the $5 US cutoff. We'll read it on air, although don't let that be the bar for entry. As you know, every little bit helps. And if we have time, and I think, are we tight to the hour today? I think so. If we have time, we'll do our best to read those at the end of the show. If you are watching us on YouTube, good news. We are remonetized over there. I believe it's the Trump effect coupled with some hard work of the editorial team here at Rebel News. So if you want to leave us a super chat, like in the olden days. You can do that there too. And if you're watching the show not live, the recorded version of the show, you can leave something called a super thanks. So that's their paid, highlighted thank you chat that you can leave us over there. So we appreciate that. Let's get into the news of the day. David, I'll let you pick first because I really wasn't paying attention. I was working on writing up something from the Democracy Fund before I came on air.
Oh, you multitasker, you.
I was indeed.
I don't know when Sheila Gunn Reid sleeps, folks. She's always working.
Me neither.
Well, Justin Trudeau went down to Buckingham Palace, it appears, to have a audience, it's called, with King Charles on Canadian sovereignty. Let's check out what Trudeau has to say. He lost me with his first statement, Sheila Gunn Reid, by using the phrase, which is now debased, which is all options are on the table. That's the co-prime minister's language, Jagmeet Singh, and all options were on the table, except the option of, having the government fall before his pension came due. So already Trudeau off on the wrong foot. But let's see what he had to say in terms of his audience with the king.
Prime Minister Starmer said specifically it will mean UK boots on the ground and planes in the air. From your answer, I am taking that will not mean Canadian boots on the ground. Is that, just to finish, is that the case, or are you considering Canadian boots on the ground in the form of peacekeepers down the road?
Every step of the way, Canada has looked at the ways it can best help. And as I've said a few days ago, everything's on the table. We know that the Canadian military has ways that it can contribute. We're not going to get ahead of the discussions on how to keep a peace that isn't yet in place. But Canada will be there and is open to doing what is necessary, but those will be decisions taken in the coming years by Canadians and their government.
Well, Sheila, I don't think there is any appetite in Canada for boots on the ground and planes in the air. There are Canadian troops over in Ukraine training the troops.
Right.
That's about as far as I want to go. And, when it comes to Ukraine needing boots on the ground, since Zelenskyy really broke things completely on Friday, and it's up to him to fix things with the White House. Well, if Europe is going to come to Ukraine's defense, by all means do so. Germany, Sheila, which has sort of a recent history of, getting involved in world affairs when it comes to warfare. Last I looked, they have 1 million migrant young men that they don't know what to do with. Hey, how about putting them in uniforms and sending them north? I'm okay with that.
I'm just going to drill out on this issue for a second. Trudeau is resigned. Who is he to say he's going to send boots on the ground? Like, he's resigned. He won't unprorogue Parliament. Yep. He has no right or mandate to be making these decisions. Morally and ethically, probably technically he does. But boots on the ground? Really? They're going to have to buy their own boots, by the way, because our military is underfunded, decrepit, and woke. And that is definitely not an indictment of those who serve. It's an indictment of the institution.
Of course.
So what is he talking about? We've got our troops sharing sleeping bags, buying their own bulletproof vests or at least protective vests, their helmets. And we've got them using back at home because we don't pay them enough, using food banks. So what is he talking about? Also, where are we going to find the ones that we need to deploy to the border? Because we also promised the Americans that. So what are we going to do? Are we going to send troops abroad, or are we going to secure the homeland here to stave off tariffs? I guess it's Justin Trudeau's choice, and he's supposed to be resigned as the prime minister. So what the heck is going on here?
Yeah, it's less than a week away from March 9th, Sheila, and yet Justin Trudeau is gallivanting around the world, kind of like on the farewell tour of Santa Claus, giving a few billion here, a couple of billion there. But I don't think, Sheila, if you were to put that question in a referendum to Canadians, yay or nay, do you think there is any appetite of Canadians going to Ukraine and getting slaughtered by a
Oh,
superpower.
do you know what? I would ask the people who are serving in the military, because if you listen to the left, they're like, yeah, throw Canadian boys on the bonfire of this stuff now, based on, you know, their hysterical, out of control reactions to a very short clip of a very long press conference with JD Vance, Trump, and Zelensky. They're ready to quite literally go to war, but not them go to war, send other people's sons to war. We'll talk about this in a second. Let's move ahead to Melanie Joly. She's our Foreign Affairs, Global Affairs Minister. She's reacting to the tense exchange between President Trump and President Zelensky that was last week. And she said, clearly the Russians are noting the interaction that happened today. You know who should be noting it? The liberals. Let's watch this.
Yes, I've had. What is your reaction to that? Well, first and foremost, and my reaction is the same than when you asked me the question before I saw the interaction. First and foremost, we believe in supporting Ukraine. Our position has not changed. We think Ukrainians are fighting for their own freedoms, but also fighting for ours. And we know that President Putin has no red lines. And he is, if we don't have a good deal for Ukraine, if we're not supporting Ukraine, there's a real risk that President Putin will go back to Russia, rearm, and reinvade Ukraine, which would become, again, a security threat for Ukraine, of course, but for NATO. And when we are talking about NATO, we're talking about us, of course. Now, what I would add to that is clearly the Russians are noting the interaction that happened today. And so our goal is to make sure that we can continue to support Ukrainians and that we can keep very strong G7 unity amidst all this unpredictability and sometimes even chaos.
Well, Sheila, again, I go back to that meeting in the White House where there was not a good deal, but a great deal for Ukraine on the table in terms of the U.S. buying minerals. And Zelensky, well, to quote one former Russian president, was an insolent pig. And of course, because of Trump derangement syndrome, it's the president getting called out. But I learned something very interesting today. A few years ago, Joe Biden, the then U.S. president, had a conversation of a similar nature with Zelensky, where he was going to send another $1 billion to Ukraine. And before President Biden could finish his sentence, Zelensky interrupted him and said all these other needs and demands and how there's far more billions needed. And Biden, rightfully so, I would say, Sheila, he lost his temper. Why was that never covered in the media? Why is it just when Big Bad Orange Man rightfully loses his temper, it's all hands on deck to denounce the president? And another thing, it's a bit of a sidebar, but he was asked about it. Zelensky, when you go to the White House, can you show some respect for the office and wear a suit and tie and not look like you're ready to work out in the gym? He can't even do that. And one last point on this. I was watching Mark Levin, the great one, last night, Sheila, and evidently this was information I didn't know because I thought this is so inexplicable. Why is Zelensky being an ingrate in terms of this multi-billion-dollar minerals deal? And before that meeting took place, he had meetings with Democrats advising him to reject the Trump deal. Hello, Zelensky, do you have a calendar? It's 2025, White House under new management right now. Who cares what the Democrats have to say? So until he apologizes and comes back hat in hand to the White House, all bets are off. He broke it. He's got to fix it.
And look, before the CBC accuses us of being pro-Russian propagandists, I don't think Ezra can even go to Russia, given that he wrote a book called Groundswell that is quite critical of Gazprom. That's for sure. But here's the thing. You're not allowed to, in this country, have a nuanced position on this. I can be both anti-Russian expansionism and anti-invasion, but also why is this my problem? Like, I don't know how that position is no longer acceptable. That you can be anti-Russian expansionism, anti-invasion, pro-Ukrainian sovereignty, but anti-forever war, sending money at I think something that will never resolve unless a peace deal is struck. Like, they will just continue to throw bodies on this until a peace deal is struck. And I think both sides have to come to that realization. And you can also say, I believe in Ukrainian sovereignty, but Zelenskyy is a petulant, ungrateful little jerk simultaneously who's not doing anything for his own cause. The Americans have sent over $1/3 of $1 trillion to Ukraine. The guy should start acting like it.
Exactly.
But he's not. Like, that's the part that I can't stand. But moreover, to the point I was trying to make from the very beginning of this, but I got myself off on a side note or a side quest there. You know who should be really paying attention to what just happened in the White House is the Liberals, because Donald Trump rolled up the world's darling into a carpet, stuffed him in a trunk, and then threw him in the ditch in front of the world's media with 0 Fs given, right? He sat there, he took the petulance for 40 minutes straight before J.D. Vance said enough is enough.
No,
and Trump didn't care. So what do you think he is going to do to Mark Carney and these liberals' constant anti-American rhetoric? It's one thing to be pro-Canada first. It's another thing to define yourself as the anti-America party. And if we think that he's not going to do the exact same thing to, I think, a political lightweight like Mark Carney, the liberals have another thing coming.
No, that's a great point, Sheila. And to your original point, if I understand what you said correctly, you're saying, and I totally agree, that several things can be correct at the same time.
Yes.
But the left cherry pick. In fact, the left, the media, well, on both sides of the border, they're atrocious. Instead of saying that, instead of saying there are several things that can be right at the same time, their narrative is, it's kind of like this, their perverse logic. David Menzies likes Baco Noir wine. Hitler liked Baco Noir wine. Therefore, Menzies is a Nazi. I mean, it is convoluted, ridiculous logic. And what you said is correct. Yes, Russia's the aggressor. Putin is a bully. That is correct. They started this war. But Zelenskyy, in not being grateful and pushing a Democrat agenda while a Republican is the president in the White House cutting the checks, the entitlement, the tone deafness, Sheila, is staggering.
Yeah, I don't know how this resolves any other way than peace negotiations. Like, there is no other way except a forever war. And there will come a time where the Western world, regardless of their rhetoric about how Ukraine is fighting for the rest of us, we will cease to fund a forever war. That's just how it's going to be. And so there has to be some resolution before that. I hate the idea that Russia invaded Ukraine, but I also hate the idea of young men on both sides being tossed into this mess over and over and over again.
And Sheila, that is a key phrase you said there, young men, or better clean up my language, young people. Anyways, no, you're right, young men. What about the side effects of this conflict? Ukraine is running out of young men. Ukraine, with their veterans of this needless, ridiculous war, you're going to see young Ukrainian males suffering from PTSD for decades to come, going on substance abuse. They're going to need help. And not to mention those who went to the front who lost limbs in this conflict. So I think, isn't that an initiative to get things done? And Sheila, the mineral rights is one thing. I mean, Donald Trump, speaking as a businessman, wants some quid pro quo for all these billions of dollars, many of which, by the way, I hate to be a cynic here, are unaccountable for, but he wants a quid pro quo in terms of getting precious minerals to the US. And Zelenskyy is going to have to swallow the fact that Ukraine is going to have to give up territory to Russia. It's as
Yeah.
simple as that in order to put this to an end. I think it's worth it to do those deals.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's an absolute mess. There's no other way forward except negotiations. Even if the Ukrainians don't have minerals that the Americans want, in good faith, they should be negotiating with them also. I don't know. It's just an absolute mess. I can think that Putin is a bad guy and that Zelenskyy is not running this right. Like I think those two things can be true in my head at the very same time. But if you ask the people at the CBC, definitely not. You have
it's
to
funny,
worship.
Sheila.
You have to worship at the cult of Zelenskyy.
Yeah.
That's the only acceptable viewpoint.
Yeah. No, that's not my bag, especially the way he has basically canceled democracy in Ukraine. I know that's a little side note there. But yeah, as you said, even if there are no precious minerals in Ukraine, you know where there are precious minerals, Sheila? In Northern
Here.
Ontario. There's something called the Ring of Fire. Guess what? At Doug Ford's victory speech on Thursday night, he said, we are going to develop the Ring of Fire. You know what, Sheila? I had deja vu all over again. He said that in 2018 at his victory speech. It's 7 years later. When are we going to see this Ring of Fire getting developed?
Right. Yeah, and then if he had done that, the province of Ontario might have had a little bit more bargaining leverage with our American friends, the way Alberta did.
100%.
But hindsight's 2020, and Doug Ford appears to be blind. Let's go to one more clip from Melanie Joly. She says, basically, we're going to shut the Americans out. We have to work together with the UK to address the unpredictability coming out of the White House. I think unpredictability is the absolute wrong word. I think all of this is completely predictable. And Trump has been telling us what he's going to do for a very long time. They're just upset that he's following through.
It is just in our DNA to be close to the UK. And so I'm confident that we will be able to continue this strong partnership between Canada and the UK on full display. And at the same time, we need to work together on addressing the unpredictability that is coming out of the White House. And that is why I was there earlier this week. And we're working on finding ways to work on counter tariffs, should there be tariffs imposed, and also on having strong security alliances, including on intelligence sharing.
Well, I will say this, Sheila, to be fair, the unpredictability is what those tariffs will be in terms of how much on what commodities they will affect. And Sheila, if we believe the threat is real, that the tariffs take place tomorrow or midnight tonight, well, according to my Timex, that's 10 and a half hours away. And I don't have a firm understanding of what's going to be nailed and what's going to be spared and what the rates are. Where do you stand on this?
I don't know. I think there might be a last minute. We'll push it till April. Trump sort of said something about that last week. Then he said it was a misspeak. I think it was maybe not a misspeak, but maybe he said it too soon. If you know what I mean. So we'll see. Although, on the stuff that Trump has been talking about, we haven't really seen any work done by the Canadians on it. They announced their fentanyl czar, and then I never heard anything from him again. I was all excited. I'm like, finally, I'm not sure if this is the right guy for the job, but maybe he'll start working. No, we haven't done any. And the thing is, maybe he is working, but we need to see proof of work. I think that's really important in the media relations game here, is that if you appoint a fentanyl czar, you need to have the perception that he's working. And I don't think we have that not for Canadians and not for Americans either.
Well, two things, Sheila. First of all, why do we always use the term czar for the head honcho in a Western democracy? I mean, czar is very Russian-y, isn't it? I mean, we need a fentanyl czar in Ottawa. Toronto needs a traffic czar to get cars moving again in Hogtown. I think that's really odd. But on the issue of fentanyl, let's not downplay that. Now, the apologists are saying, where's the problem? I can't remember. It was either 45 or 48 kilograms of fentanyl were intercepted at the border. So they go, look, it's a drop in the ocean. Excuse me, folks, 48 or 45 kilograms of fentanyl were intercepted. How much got through? That's
Right.
the question. Is it double, triple, 20-fold? We don't know. But we know it is a problem. We know that's going into the U.S. And I'm sorry if Donald Trump wants to protect American borders and American lives. He's got every right to do so. And last year I went to a Pierre Poilievre rally here in Toronto, Sheila, and he taught. This was an unbelievable anecdote of how law enforcement has been working under the Justin Trudeau Liberals. He talked about somebody in Toronto who had his luxury SUV stolen, but he had a tracking device. And if you can imagine, he followed it all the way to Montreal, and he went to the shipping yards where it was being loaded onto a boxcar. Guess what? The CBSA agents arrested him for trespassing on the shipping yards and didn't do anything about his, I think it was a Lexus SUV about to be shipped over to Nigeria. This is insane.
Well, and moreover, to your point, while they say, well, we grabbed 45 kilograms of fentanyl or whatever it was, 2 milligrams of fentanyl is a lethal dose.
Yeah.
So imagine how many people that could kill. Like my province over again.
I think you're right.
You know, that's a lot of fentanyl.
Yep.
And so that's what we're stopping. Exactly right. What is getting through? We should all be very worried about that. And again, this is the provinces are doing this work. I have not seen the fentanyl czar, however you spell it, CZ or TS.
Correct.
Who even knows? Let's move ahead to. I just want to go to this one video of Poilievre, who says that he's not MAGA. Trump said, "Oh, this guy Poilievre, he's not MAGA." Okay, Trump. He's not supposed to be MAGA. He's Canadian. He shouldn't be Make America Great Again. He should be Make Canada Great Again. Like he should be Canada first. Because that's who he's planning to lead. So I thought that was just sort of a weird criticism. But anyways, Poilievre points out the lack of foresight, again, by the Trudeau Liberals in blocking all those darn pipelines. He said if we had 1 million barrels of Western Canadian oil going to Europe right now, would Putin be able to fund a 3-year-long war? Ain't that the truth? If we had natural gas headed their way, we could take a bite out of Gazprom funding the war machine, but don't mention that to a Liberal. Anyway, let's watch this video.
Best way to provide support is by selling Canadian energy, breaking the Russian monopoly that finances the war. Putin has total dominance on the European energy market because Canada, under Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, has said no. You know, I wonder sometimes if we had 1 million barrels of Western Canadian oil going to Europe right now, or 3 years ago, if we had thousands of cubic feet every day of natural gas going to Europe from Canada, would Putin have been able to fund a 3-year-long war? I doubt it. But Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney said there was no business case for exporting LNG and oil. Both of them have opposed pipelines. They're on the record. Don't be fooled. The last minute promises they make before elections are not even worth the promises, not even worth the paper they're written on. Only the Conservatives will repeal the Liberals' anti-development law and rapidly export Canadian oil and gas and other materials to break dependence on dirty dictators and bring home powerful paychecks for our people.
You know, Sheila, that's a profound point. And going back to, I mentioned Germany earlier on. Do you know right now, Germany is dependent on Russia for 60 to 70% of their oil needs. 70%. And you're going to be talking tough to Russia when Russia can basically win a war with Germany by turning off the taps. And I think Mr. Poilievre is right. The idea that this government said there was no business case, liquefied natural gas alone, I believe with Germany, Japan, Greece, begging for our liquefied natural gas and blackface saying there's no business case. And that was almost 1 trillion with a T dollars. 1 trillion? No business case? I guess we don't have a homeless crisis. I guess we don't have Canadians going to the food banks. I guess we don't have unemployment and a cost of living and a healthcare crisis. Sheila, it's preposterous. And I hope Mr. Poilievre, should he become the next prime minister, he unburdens this nation of these shackles so that we can develop our energy sector and export our energy to a huge market that awaits.
Yeah, I mean, and the Liberals have done their best to hide the number of times Japan has asked us for access to our liquefied natural gas. For example, the last time the Japanese leader visited Canada, the only way you knew that he once again brought up the issue of liquefied natural gas was if you looked at the Japanese readout of the meeting, because it was not in the Canadian readout of the meeting because they don't want they don't want the world to know how many times they've said no to offset, like not just said no to selling Western Canadian oil and gas, but let's put it in their worldview, said no to fighting Russia with an economic sanction. This is an economic sanction against Russia, like by proxy, by offsetting their gas that's going to the rest of the world. The Liberals wouldn't even do it that way, even if you approached it for them that way. They so hate. This is what I think. The Liberals hate Western Canada more than they hate Putin. Right? That's the only way that I can come to that conclusion is, look, if you don't like Putin and you won't shut up about not liking Putin, why wouldn't you let us sell our oil and gas to the world to offset Putin's Gazprom? They won't let us do that. So what am I left to conclude? You hate me more than you hate Putin.
I think you're right, Sheila. Western Canada is a desert when it comes to votes for the Liberals. Yep. Secondly, it's a double whammy, isn't it? The other point, I believe, is ludicrous virtue signaling. We're fighting climate change. We're not going to contribute anywhere in the world to CO2 emissions. So those two factors, I think, are the 1-2 punch driving this government, because fiscally, this is lunacy.
Yeah. Speaking of lunacy, we'll get into Doug Ford's solution to the tariffs. I'm just going to pay the bills with a quick ad read, and then we'll do a Rebel News ad, and then we'll come back in with Doug Ford and Chrystia Freeland, I think, probably. Chrystia Freeland campaigning to the Americans after telling us to cancel our American vacations and not drink Florida orange juice. She goes on Bill Maher's show, and you're like, what? You told us to be anti-American. Like, her whole personality is anti-Americanism, except when she wants to be like the fancy, worldly Canadian feminist, then it's something else. So anyways, this sponsorship is from our friends at Rumble, and it's one that's incredibly important to the survival of Rumble, but also us here at Rebel News, because Rumble stood by us when nobody else would. When Rumble first started in 2013, they built the platform for the small creator. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or censor opinions on COVID, but they did. Facebook even admitted they fell to pressure from the Biden and Harris administration. And now Zuckerberg's like, you know what? I might be against censorship. Okay, thanks. Where were you 3 years ago? Rumble did not. They held the line. They are attacked daily for giving us a voice to talk to you. They're attacked in corporate media. They're attacked by governments like France. They're attacked from brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. Corporate America is fighting to remove speech. Rumble's fighting to keep it. Rumble, however, won't survive with brand advertisers because they just don't get much of it. Watching our show on Rumble is the most they can ask from you. But if you really believe in this fight, and if you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium. Just cancel your YouTube Premium and move it on over to Rumble. Join the community that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human right to free speech. Rumble is offering $10 off with the promo code STUDIO when you purchase an annual subscription. Go to rumble.com/premium. Use the code STUDIO. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in the cause, now's the time to join Rumble Premium. Now, if you don't have the means, and I understand if you don't, we're just happy if you watch us on Rumble. Let's do a quick Rebel News ad break and then come back in with Doug Ford and then Freeland campaigning to the Americans for some reason, like Mark Carney did.
I've got a better idea than tariffs. What would an America First strategy for Canada-US trade look like? Is there room for a Trump-style mega deal even bigger than Greenland? A dozen years ago, I wrote a best-selling book called Ethical Oil, The Case for Canada's Oil Sands, which made the liberal argument that the oil sands are the fair trade coffee of the world's oil industry. In my new book, Deal of the Century, I look at Canada-US trade through an America First lens, and I come to the conclusion that far from putting tariffs on Canadian oil, Donald Trump should ink a 50-year, $13 trillion deal to buy all 170 billion barrels of Canada's oil sands, shutting out China and giving Canada the means to pay for a rebuilt military. And as for yanking Trudeau's chain, well, he'll be gone as prime minister in a few weeks, but I've got a better suggestion for how Trump can slap Trudeau around a bit without hurting America's economic interests. That's in the book too. Get your copy now at dealofthecenturybook.com. And trust me, Trudeau doesn't want you to see this.
Canadians know the national anthem. They stand in silence to remember those who died for this country. But not every Canadian knows their rights and freedoms. The Freedom Passport will change that. It looks and feels like a Canadian passport, but contains the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in a portable, easy-to-read format. The Freedom Passport. Order one for yourself and for all the freedom lovers that you love at freedompassport.ca.
Now, Sheila, before we get on to Ontario's number one cherry cheesecake enthusiast and Fraulein Freeland, I just want to confirm you were questioning in the first segment if czar is spelt C-Z, and I can confirm that is true. And I want to tell you a quick anecdote on words that begin with C-Z. You know, when I was in grade 7, I was in a spelling bee, and I was very often winning it because the way it worked, folks, is that you gave to a fellow classmate a word, and if they couldn't spell it, well, they're eliminated, but you have to spell the word too. And my go-to word was always Czechoslovakia, which I don't think I can spell even right now as an adult. And so when it came time for me to spell it, well, I had a pencil and it was marked made in Czechoslovakia, and it worked every time until I forgot my pencil and was outed as a cheat. But hey, a W is a W. Eh, Sheila Gunn Reid?
That's right. That's right. Let's talk about, speaking of W's, Doug Ford really thinks he's taken a W here because he thinks the way around like billions of dollars in tariffs being slapped on the auto sector is, well, just take a listen. He's going to win the tariff war with the LCBO.
I said, number one, I don't start a tariff war, but we're going to win this tariff war. Right off the hop, I've directed the LCBO, we're the largest purchaser of alcohol in the world, to remove every bit of U.S. alcohol off the shelves. I know my good friend, the governor of Kentucky, he's losing his mind right now. I said, you better talk to your president. Mitch McConnell, senior senator from Kentucky, they're losing their mind. We purchased over $1 billion of alcohol, 3,600 products, 35 states. It's going to hit them. We call them the kitchen table issues. Then we're going to cancel Starlinks right away from Elon Musk. Not that $100 million makes a difference for him, but it's principle. I've directed the procurement of over $30 billion of goods, not to go to the US, to make sure we buy Ontario first. And if we can't find it in Ontario and we can't build it in Ontario, we go across the country. We have 51 tariff-free agreements with countries around the world. We're going to diversify our trade.
Sheila, if I can weigh in on this, because this is something I know a thing or two about when it comes to the LCBO. First of all, when Doug Ford says the LCBO is the biggest purchaser of alcohol in the world, that's false. It's one of, but not the biggest. Secondly, Dougie, what are you going to do about addressing the anti-Ontario wine bias at the LCBO? The last time I wrote about this, Sheila, the LCBO allotted approximately 17% of shelf space to Ontario wines, even though those wines bring in 38% of revenue. Meanwhile, tons of space. Every country, every wine producing region in the world, France, Germany, South Africa, Portugal, Italy, Chile, you name it. You know, folks, go to, and by the way, the LCBO says we have to do this based on international trade agreements. That's a lie, because I had a lawyer go through the 1,400 pages to try to find that stipulation. It does not exist. So, and if you go to, say, a Parisian liquor store in France, try to find a single Ontario bottle of wine, other than maybe ice wine, which they cannot produce in France. So if we're under international trade agreements, why aren't the other partners to that agreement? The reason? Because it doesn't exist. So when Doug Ford is saying he's going to make tough with Kentucky, his own, and by the way, I want to say this too, Sheila, the LCBO is technically a crown corporation. It is a government unto itself. It runs the racket. It tells their ministers and their bureaucrats how things are being done. So don't give me this crap about getting tough with international players that are being unfair. When your own Ontario Crown Corporation screws Ontario winemakers, and I would love, Sheila, I would love to get Ontario winemakers who have spoken to on the record, and they will not come on the record. Why? Because they will get delisted, right? That is your provincial run liquor monopoly. So spare me the pearl clutching, Doug Ford.
He also says that, well, he knows what we need to do if we want to survive these tariffs. Now, all of a sudden, he's turning his ire to his friend Justin for not removing interprovincial trade barriers. But this is something that he could have, like Alberta's been rattling against interprovincial trade barriers for ages. The Western provinces have, but when you are Doug Ford and you need to not fight with the feds because you need your battery plant grants, you keep your mouth shut until you absolutely have to say something. So this is what he's saying.
What jurisdiction in the world can take 5 to 7 to 10 years to get done? That's done. We're going to move forward. We're going to work with First Nations communities. We can't be dilly-dallying around for 5, 10 years. Well, our neighbors to the south are saying, come to the U.S., we'll get your permits for a year, and you have to invest $1 billion. That's what we're up against. Those rules have to change. If we want to survive these tariffs, literally, we need to make sure we move forward. We need to make sure that we get the federal government out of our way. No more duplication on assessments. I just love working with Webequay and Martin Falls. Aeroland, we don't need the assessment. We're going to start building that 80 kilometers of road. I want to thank the First Nations communities for working with us, because that's going to make sure their communities are prosperous.
Sheila, this is staggering. I said earlier on in the show that one of his promises at the victory speech last Thursday was developing the Ring of Fire, which was identical to the promise he made when he first won the election in 2018. And this guy is so tone deaf. He says we can't be dilly-dallying around for 7 years. You have dilly-dallied around
Right.
for precisely 7 years on this, Doug. Aren't you paying attention to your own lies?
It's so funny how like clueless he is now. But he's been reelected with a mandate.
Yep.
So, and almost as strong as his previous mandate. So he just gets to say crazy things. That's what we're going to have to put up with. Just saying crazy things. Speaking of saying crazy things, Freeland went on Bill Maher. Gosh, I hope she finds who's been in charge all these years and asks them what's going on. She's I don't know which one we want to start with. Do we want to start with her like renouncing the wokeism of the liberal policies, or do we want to go to Bill taking her to task?
Can we do both? Do we have time for both, Sheila? Because
I would love
gold.
to.
Okay.
I would love to. Do we have the wokeism one first? Did I put you on the spot?
All right. And by the way, to what you said earlier,
No, we've got the climate change one, but there's one where Freeland, I know, let's show the climate change one where he actually takes Freeland to task on Ottawa's ridiculous green energy policies. While we're watching that, if you wouldn't mind finding the one where Freeland is sick of the virtue signaling, if you wouldn't mind.
Works for me.
Let's watch this one first.
I saw recently, I think it was last week, Ottawa, I see, is trying to pass a law limiting the amount of time you can idle your car. Now, I've been in Canada in the winter. It's pretty fucking cold out there.
That's why we used to have snowbirds before we decided we didn't want to spend our money in the United States.
And I don't think this, I mean, the reasoning is it's going to put a dent in global warming. I don't think it is. That you can only idle your car for a minute, I think remotely in 3 minutes if you're in it before you can get going to warm it up. This just pisses people off. And it looks like, as in America, they still haven't gotten the memo that this shit don't work. So you're against that kind of stuff, right?
Look, Bill, I have got the menu. I have received the memo, to be a polite Canadian. I have received the memo, sir.
Yes.
And, politicians win when they listen to people sincerely and hear what people are saying to them about their lives. And politicians lose when we think we are smarter than the people we work for. And when we think our job is to lecture people. That's not how democracy works.
People don't like bossy and they don't like snobs.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I'm always trying to tell the left. Okay.
Although,
yeah, they don't like bossy
That's
and
the
they
one.
don't like snobs. I'm surprised she didn't say, why are you looking right at me, Bill? And I'm happy Bill Maher didn't get arrested by Uncle Fester of the RCMP for having the temerity to ask an impolite question. But that stupid, flippant answer, another liberal lie, Sheila, when she was answering the idling query by saying, well, we used to have snowbirds, but now that we're boycotting the US, Sheila, are there any snowbirds boycotting the US? And as a matter of fact, several years ago, it used to be you could leave the country as a snowbird. I think it was for 6 months. And they've actually increased the time. I believe it is 8 months. So far from snowbirds retracting and flying home to the frigid Great White North, they're spending more time in Florida and Arizona and California. This woman can't tell the truth, Sheila.
And politicians lose when they lecture people. That's all this woman has done. Her like entire time, she's lectured us about what it means to be a Canadian in a very specific kindergarten lectury voice. Canadians know and Canadians understand, and we all know and we all understand. No, lady, the only person who doesn't seem to understand what's going on here is you. But she always lectures Canadians. You know, they don't like snobs. She's one of the snobbiest broads in Ottawa. She's telling us that we don't need to drive cars because she doesn't drive a car. That's a very snobby, elitist worldview, given that the rest of us don't live in this little tiny Toronto bubble like she does.
But Sheila, that's another lie. I even know the model of car she drives. She drives
Of
a
course.
Volkswagen. She sometimes shows up with herself behind the wheel. I don't know
She
why.
doesn't own that. She doesn't own that, though. That's what she said. I don't own a car. No, we do. We own the car. We give it to you to drive. So she, again, very privileged based on her role in government to say, well, I don't need to own a car, so you don't have to. Yeah, but you're not against cars. You either have a driver or you rent one and get speeding tickets, or you have one taxpayer funded one provided.
Well, who owns that Volkswagen?
We do.
Oh, okay. So wait a minute. There are no made in Canada vehicles that she could drive. I can tell you Lexus, Honda, Toyota, Ford, General Motors, Chrysler, they're all here. They're all making made in Canada vehicles. Why is that? Why is that not on the procurement list? Forget about when all this tariff talk began, Sheila. Why wasn't that part of the process in the first place?
David, I can't even get these ridiculous hypocrites to buy electric vehicles. I went through their ministerial vehicles and there was like 4, which was probably about right given like the extrapolation to the Canadian population. That was probably about right, but they had about 4 that were a hybrid or hybrid electric. And then when we inquired about why they didn't have more electric or hybrid electric vehicles, they said, well, or smaller, more fuel efficient cars, because a lot of these are SUVs. They said, well, we need something safe. We're on the road all the time. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. Us too.
Sheila, that is so perverse because they're making the case against electric vehicles. So, there's that Australian instrument, Avi Yamini would know what I'm talking about. It's very complicated because you have to suck and blow at the same time. So they're saying, please save the planet by driving an EV. They're investing tens of billions with a B, billions of dollars into white elephant battery plants. And then when it comes to show me the money, we can't because it's a safety issue.
Yeah, we want something safe and reliable on the road. And I was like, exactly why I chose the vehicle I chose. Exactly why we don't want your stupid electric vehicle mandate, which still stands at least until the Liberals are removed from government. Like, why would their reasons for choosing the vehicles they drive be any different than the ones Canadians families have? But they live in their little bubble, so the rules don't apply to them. There's one more very lovely clip. Again, the woman has it's like she is hard of remembering the last 9 years in the Liberal government, that like her misperception of herself is wild. She says that Liberals lose elections when they focus on virtue signaling and identity politics.
So Justin Trudeau, who's on his way out, used to be very popular. I mean, he still has his fans, 3. And they may be asking, why did you turn on him? Because, you were part of his government. What
9
was
years
it?
in.
And also, what would you do differently? And if you watch the election here, don't ever say, nothing comes to mind. That's the bad answer to that one. What would you do differently?
Well, with the Prime Minister, I think every politician has their sell-by date, and that's part of what happened. But I think the other thing that happened is my party, we're actually called the Liberal Party, and I am an old school Liberal.
The hell?
And Liberals in Canada win when we are focused on people and on what they need in their lives. And we lose when people think that we're focused on virtue signaling and identity politics.
So the same thing that sunk the party here in America when they went too far left. And that's the impression I got from Justin Trudeau. Why did he go and become one of those elitist type of scolds who looked like he was just overbearing, that sort of left-wing overbearingness?
That's what Freeland is.
Exactly.
That's what Freeland is too, though. Like, in 9 years, she never once spoke up to a Canadian audience about virtue signaling. Not even once. In fact, she was one of the fiercest of them all. If anybody directed criticism at her, it was because I'm a woman. Not because I'm completely inept and I destroyed the economy, because I'm a woman. Anybody who was critical of her, they were the Nazis, not Freeland standing with the Nazi scarf, celebrating a Nazi in the House of Commons. She called people names. She froze their bank accounts. She never once, even if she disagreed with the virtue signaling, instead of being one of the biggest proponents of it, did you ever hear her speak up even once against it? Not even for a second.
No, 100%, Sheila. And by the way, please, Sheila, on the Nazi file, don't forget to mention her grandfather being a Nazi propagandist.
Right.
You know.
I was going to make a joke about that when you were talking about the Volkswagen car she chose, but I felt
never
like it was a
thought-
little too on the nose, so I just let it go.
But Sheila, another lie, when she describes herself as an old school liberal, to me, an old school liberal means classical liberal.
Yeah,
This
free speech.
party are not, it's not comprised of classical liberals. I mean, today in Canada, if you're a classical liberal, you're pretty much a conservative. These are Marxists. These are virtue signalers. And for her to describe herself as that, it's just absolutely outrageous. But I guess all that stuff that she's been enduring for 9 years. What did Roger Clemens say during the steroid investigations when he was caught in a lie? Oh, yeah, she's misremembered. Yeah.
Right.
I never even knew that was a word, but you know, there you go. Works for her too, like it did for Roger.
Okay, we've got one quick ad read from our friends at Truth Social, and then maybe we'll move into the pop culture stuff of the Oscars. I did not watch the Oscars. I don't care about the Oscars. I don't care about anything related to pop culture. David, you kind of do, but I don't know if you pay attention to more recent movies. I don't, except the woke controversies that swirl around this stuff because people are not woke enough, and then everybody gets mad at them. And I think, good. Each your own. But I have to read this quick ad from our friends at Truth Social because we need to pay the bills. If you're looking for a great place online for news, discussion, and entertainment, then check out Truth Social, Donald Trump's social media website. You'll get breaking news, stories, and commentary from top media figures. If you want to see Trump's legendary Truth Social posts, then get on Truth Social today. There's a reason you should do this, because otherwise you're going to get what the media said Trump said and not what Trump actually said. For example, the interaction with Zelenskyy. You might have seen 7 or 8 or even 9 minutes or even just 30 seconds of what happened there. You won't get the full 50 minutes of the full context. So if you go to Truth Social, you won't get it filtered through the lens of the media. Join a growing community of patriots on a free speech platform designed to avoid censorship and cancellation by big tech. Make your voice heard. Join the movement. Join Truth Social. All right, let's go into, David, I'll let you pick Oscars nonsense.
Sure, but I just want to finish a point you made that you're detached from this. And Sheila, quick anecdote. Lady Menzoy and I, we used to make a big deal out of the Oscars. We'd be involved with a pool. They used to be televised on a Monday night. For some reason, we got into this habit, this is going back to the early 90s, of getting a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken for Oscar night. Well, that was before Kentucky Fried Chicken in Ontario went 100% halal, but never mind. And I said to Lady Menzoid last night, she was saying we weren't watching the Oscars, but she said, when was the last time we went to a movie? And I said, I remember. We went to see Joker in 2019, and Sheila, let me tell you something. We're blessed with a cinema called Imagine Cinemas. It's walking distance from our house. It's a beautiful multiplex because they renovated it. They've got these reclining seats, big seats, very comfortable, great screens. So let's see, walking distance. It's cheaper than the Cineplex cinemas, beautiful seats. What's missing from the equation? Oh, I know. Content. There's been nothing in 6 years I've wanted to see on the big screen. And I'm a big movie fan. Joker was the last one. Almost went to Joker 2, but I was warned away. And everyone I know hates that movie, so I don't think I missed out on anything. So, that is the state of the union right now. When we watched the Oscars way back when, it was politically incorrect. You had hosts just being vicious, savage. And now, well, I think the last couple of shows, correct me if I'm wrong, Sheila, didn't even have a host. I think Conan O'Brien hosted last night's show. But that is the state of the union with Hollywood today. I am not going to spend my hard-earned money to watch woke crap. Not a chance. I'll get my entertainment elsewhere.
Yeah, I am trying to catch up on what is happening at the Oscars or what happened at the Oscars, and it seems to be the pro-Hamas faction of Hollywood fighting with the Jewish side of Hollywood, of which there are many. There was last year, there was Artists for Ceasefire, and they wore these red pins that caused a bunch of controversy. And then, like the pro-Israel side of Hollywood said, actually, they're red pins, which indicates they're soaked in Jewish blood. And then there's the whole like side hustle of like, there's always like the gender wars shoehorned into the Oscars. And then there was also the Canadian documentary that was up for Best Documentary, which was not a documentary at all, but a complete and total fiction called Sugarcane. And it was about residential schools. And it was about, the alleged attempted murder of this one man who was said to have been thrown in an incinerator to hide the fact that his father was a priest at a residential school. Well, as it turns out, none of that is true, but you wouldn't know that if you watched the documentary called Sugarcane, which is streaming on Disney Plus. So maybe if you followed Freeland's advice and canceled your Disney Plus, you won't see this abomination. But as it turns out, the man's mother actually went to jail for trying to kill him.
But
go ahead.
Sheila, this is very important what you're saying. Because that to me is not a documentary, because it's
it's a complete lie. And it's easy to undo. It's like nobody in the Oscars, I don't know, what do they call it? Nobody in the Academy fact checked any of this. They're happy to present a complete and total lie as the truth, regardless of like what they're literally accusing people of attempted murder when somebody else went to jail for it. It's a real easy thing to debunk, but the politics are right, don't you see?
No, but here's the thing, Sheila, and you've produced a few documentaries for this company that are superb, but they're 100% fact-based. The facts are bulletproof. When you get a little, liberal with the truth, it ceases to be a documentary. The biggest violator, by the way, is Michael Moore. Whenever he produces a doc and you catch him in a lie, like when he came to Toronto and he said Torontonians don't even lock their doors. Excuse me? Well, maybe in 1950, but believe me, right now you have security cameras installed.
Just
and Michael Moore always says, he always says this, Sheila, well, sometimes we use a little creative license. The second you do that, your work ceases to be a documentary. Now it's fiction. So which is it? You can't have a hybrid in that category, but clearly the Academy doesn't care, right?
Yeah. I guess, here's one. Did Adam Sandler mock Zelenskyy by wearing a sweatshirt to the Academy Awards? I don't know. They said Adam Sandler's casual attire sparked speculation about its political implications. I don't know. They said Sandler prompted several social media users to compare the moment between the recent Trump-Zelenskyy incident. Adam Sandler did a spoof of the Trump-Zelenskyy Oval Office showdown by wearing a sweatshirt. I don't know. I think Adam Sandler looks pretty schleppy at the best of times. That's the joke around my house, is that on my own time I dress like Adam Sandler. My kids are like, "Oh, what are you wearing?"
But you pull it off greatly, Sheila. But I share your confusion. Is he mocking Zelenskyy, or is he standing in solidarity with him? I don't know. I mean, and that means his stunt was a fail, because the marketing.
If I don't
push,
know, then
what was the point? But you know what? I go, whether you're at the Oscars or you're going into the especially if you're going into the White House, dress for the occasion. By the way, since we're talking about pop culture, one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation, because I'm a pop culture nerd, is when Captain Picard has been kidnapped and is being tortured by the Cardassians. So there's a new captain on board the Enterprise. And he says to Deanna Troi, the counselor, he pulls her aside and he says, by the way, I expect a level of decorum on the bridge of a starship. Could you please wear a Starfleet issued uniform instead of those stupid yoga pants she was always wearing? And she looked damn good in the uniform, I got to tell you that. But yeah, you don't wear your casual attire. I mean, like, you wouldn't have a military where it's, hey, we're not into uniforms, just wear what you like. I mean, the idea of a uniform is uniformity. And when Zelenskyy, assuming he's going to do the right thing and make that phone call and do a sniveling apology, if I'm Trump, I'm going, hey, listen, when you come back to Washington, I'll give you a list of places. Some are cheap places. You can buy something off the cuff. Wear a suit into the White House, okay? That's one of the conditions moving forward with this deal. End of story.
Well, I don't know, because if you listen to the left, Zelenskyy is now the leader of the free world. And so we should maybe follow his decorum advice. Like, they've literally said Zelenskyy is the leader of the free world. Okay. I see Daryl Hannah. She, while presenting an award, voiced her support for Ukraine by saying Slava Ukraini, which means glory to Ukraine. I think Freeland also tweeted that at some point. The general Ukrainian flag pins were there. And then Zoe Saldana, she said she criticized Trump's immigration policies as she proudly called herself a child of immigrant parents. It's just so, like, why alien? By the way, I mean, doesn't she run around with what's his face? The anti-oil sands singer, Neil Young. I think that's her better half, if you can call him that. But like, why do they have to do this? I don't care about the Oscars. I'll probably never care about the Oscars. So there might be people on the political right who are interested in movies and stuff like that. And you look at this and you're like, oh, I'm just getting lectured the whole time. No, thanks. Whatever.
100%. And Sheila, I can't remember, forgive me, if it was the Oscars or the Grammys, or not the Grammys, the Emmys, but it was a few years back when Ricky Gervais dressed down this Hollywood crowd for the ages, essentially saying, get over yourselves. If you saw the stone-faced looks in the audience, that was worth the price of admission. And Ricky Gervais, brilliant comedian that he is, he will never be invited back to Tinseltown to host anything.
He's fine.
Yeah.
He's fine. By the way, these smug jerks should probably take their nose out of the air for a little bit, given that they were apologists, or at least turn a blind eye to Harvey Weinstein's poor behavior for a very long time. Although, I think everybody was probably bad in the mix there. I cannot recommend this enough. If you want a real eye-opener about how things are reported versus how things really are, Anne McElhaney and Phelim McAleer, so they are filmmakers and journalists, Irish filmmakers and journalists living in California anyway. And they have a 501c3 called the Unreported Stories something or other. Anyways, they have a podcast on the Harvey Weinstein trial, and they did just the purest form of journalism. Every day they hired voice actors after court wrapped up, and the voice actors read the transcripts of court. And what you read in the media, including from journalists who were sitting in the courtroom reporting, completely different from the court transcripts.
Unbelievable.
It's wild. I think it's the Unreported Stories Society. But anyways, here we are. They do the grooming gangs cover up. They made the film, My Son Hunter. I cannot recommend everything they do enough. They made Frack Nation, which was a real eye-opener about the fracking renaissance in Pennsylvania and how it was saving family farms. Anne McElhaney, fun name to say, Phelim McAleer. They do wonderful work. Most of their work is crowdfunded, and their podcasts are amazing, just amazing. And their work on the Harvey Weinstein trial, I mean, I was blown away at how different it was from what was reported. Also, Kevin Spacey. I completely changed my mind about Kevin Spacey. They did the same thing. Got their hands on the transcripts, just read them without commentary. You put your own thoughts into it, and it will blow your mind. I'm not saying that Kevin Spacey wasn't a liberal, but he got mugged by liberal Hollywood. That's for sure.
He sure did. I agree on both points there, Sheila. And you know what's even worse about Weinstein is that it wasn't just the cover-up. And, you know, as you mentioned, when you read the transcripts word for word and what was reported, two different animals. But before people even knew, I mean, I'm talking about middle America, before Harvey Weinstein became a household word, it was an open joke in Hollywood. There is, I can't remember the name of the actor, but his punchline involved Harvey Weinstein in terms of being a sexual assaulter, and everyone kind of nervously chuckled. I mean, that is how detached they were from the reality of this predator. So, you know, again, joking openly about it and then covering up, that tells you all you need to know about the cesspool that is modern Hollywood.
Right. So I've got a real hard time taking cultural cues and social lectures from the people living in and covering up for modern day Sodom and Gomorrah. If you are leaving Hollywood, don't turn around. You'll turn to a pillar of salt. So yeah, I'm not taking cultural lessons from these people, but what we should do and what's morally just and right. Gross. Go away. I think that's it for the show. I think we're done everything. And I think Olivia has asked us to wrap.
Oh, okay then. Yes, because I know the studio is needed for some other journalism. Well, Sheila, thank you so much. Mea culpa for calling you a separatist at the beginning of the show. You seem to fit the profile, but nevertheless,
What, am I an Albertan?
Yeah, exactly. And folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I will be back here with Sheila on Friday. Sheila will be here for the rest of the week with a mystery guest rebel. And in the meantime, as always, stay safe and stay sane.
Today is the day to be driving that message home with our American partners, to get people in the U.S. to be calling up the White House and saying, this is a really dumb idea. Don't do this. There is no reason to have a trade war with Canada. So that is job one, is to fight, and not to give up. If the U.S. does go ahead with this colossally stupid, self-mutilating plan to impose tariffs on Canada, then we need to be resolute in our response, dollar for dollar retaliation, surgical, targeted, exerting the maximum pain so that the tariffs are lifted as soon as possible.